Three Workplace Gurus. I'm Vivienne.
Hi, Mike.
And I'm Amy.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about something that's probably on top of a lot of our minds, which is what is the state of work today? Because it's all over the map, if you ask me. So
It is.
I'm sure we all have a lot to say about this, but Mike, I actually thought we could start with you because you are actually currently working in a office that's live and well and probably has a whole bunch of different states of work. And I'd be curious just to, in your position, what you're seeing, hearing, thinking, etc.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's really all over the map. There are certainly companies that are, particularly in the Valley, that are trying really hard to get people to come back. I think some of them have been successful, some of them have not. I think the majority of maybe smaller companies, the couple thousand, couple hundred, have like our company have decided to really meet people where they are and accept that what we're doing now is the future. And then how do we adapt to that? And I think it really, to me, I think we've talked about this a little bit. To me, the most important thing is really understanding what works best for the team, what works best for your company, what works best for the individual. I remember it's been a few months, and I wish I could remember the name of the company, but it was a small startup of maybe 50 people. And the CEO was very public and very open about saying, we're going to be remote first. And then came back a few weeks later or a few months later and said, it's not working. Like we are not producing, so we're going to have to go back to the office. And he was kind of devastated. Like he was such an advocate,
Like he really
and
wanted
then
to be
realized
remote
it
first.
doesn't. Yeah. So I think that one size fits all thing is just an absolute no. We can't do it. Every company is different, and they're going to find what they do need to do to be successful. Some employees can work remotely, some employees cannot. In my case, I'm a facilities manager. Of course, I should be in the office. That's what I do for a living.
Right.
But if you're a salesperson or a marketing person or a part of the legal team, you don't necessarily have to be in the office. There are legal firms, law firms that are going partially remote because that works for them. So I know Amy doesn't want to hear any of this, but I do think that's kind of where we are. It's very individual, it's very team oriented, it's very company oriented, and I think it's all across the board. It's also cultural and it's regional. We know, for instance, there's a lot of activity in New York, San Francisco, and LA, dead. So it just depends on the location too.
Interesting. And Amy, I'm curious just because the nature of your work, you are very much customer facing where you work with many different companies and you also do space design, right? Amongst other things. So I'm just curious what you're seeing, if it feels like a mess, does it feel like, no, we're forging our way, like just kind of your impressions and then I'll give you my impressions.
It's a mess. I think it's ever evolving. I think that, what's happening today is so different than what was happening a few months ago. We're seeing a lot more mandates, not necessarily choices to go into the office. As Mike mentioned, the bigger ones, right, are mandating that you have to come in and these are the days you have to come in. That's happening more and more. So I think that that's an interesting time, right? And then how do you cater to your employees? Will they stay with you if you're mandating? I find that in our area, people don't like to be told what to do. They want it to be their own choice and to work within their schedule. So I think that that's going to be a really interesting time to see how that works out. Having said that, one of the things that I'm most excited about seeing is that in the past, we did a lot of design as a one size fits all type of workplace. And now we're doing design as a what is it that your employees going to want, need, how do they work? There's a lot more personal control in that with design. So I think that that's really exciting.
Like what would an employee need and want that's different from one to another? I'm just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you look at a specific team, marketing versus engineering or finance, right? those teams all have different needs of how that they're going to work. Maybe they work in a cohesive group, like a neighborhood of people, and they like to bounce ideas off. Or an engineer might want a real focus, heads down area. In the past, a lot of times spaces were designed just like literally marketing got the same thing as an engineer. And that's how it worked out. So it seems like we're really customizing it a little bit more to that. But then also, what is it that's bringing you into the office, right? Like, I'm coming into the office to be social. So the area that I work in should be more of a social zone. Mike might be coming into the office to be focused, heads down, because he does his social work outside of the office. So giving him that area, I know Mike's social all the time,
opposite, but yes.
But like giving that area, like lending it to whatever that need is for the employee. So I think that's what's really changed. And to me, that's the most exciting part of the role right now.
Yeah.
Amy, if you don't mind my interrupting, Viv. Amy, what are you seeing in terms of workstations? Is that changing at all?
Well, the pendulum is switching a little bit. We're going back to some partitions and dividers. I'm not going to say cubicles because that's like a negative connotation.
Oh my God,
wow. We've definitely, the pendulum went to cubicles, and then it went to full benching and no privacy. And now we're kind of moving more towards the middle with flexibility. So making sure that the workstation is not tethered to anything. So if a person wanted to move their desk around and have their dividers or their personal space, they can do that. So it's a lot more flexibility. Mm-hmm. Very configurable.
So, like we've talked about in the other episodes, that flexibility is the key of. Are you seeing my cat?
He's very flexible.
Anyhow, but no, just that, saying, hey, taking a flexible approach for people's schedules and where they're going to work. So you're kind of notching it up now, saying, hey, it's also physically flexible workstations.
Correct. Yeah. And I think also I wanted to add this other component to it. In our market here, the sublease market, there's a lot of inventory of subleases and they're full of furniture. And so when companies are looking at moving into a new space, they're taking the furniture that's being provided to them. And where a year and a half ago, they would have wanted to invest in that space, there's been a bit of a pause where companies, when they move into the space, are not wanting to invest in it. They want to see who's coming in and why are they coming in and how are they using the space before they invest in that.
But are they at least investing in the ergonomics of it? In other words, if you don't have height adjustable desks, are they going down that path, or is it literally just a hold?
It's a hold. But I would say on any projects we work on now, every desk is height adjustable. We don't ever really do any static, unless maybe there's like a small hoteling area where they don't think people are going to be using it much. But mostly it's all height adjustable.
See, because we're from an ergo perspective, and being an ergonomics company, being an ergonomist, this is one of the hardest things that I think employees are facing and employers are facing. So I'm just going to go down the ergo path for a second. That's actually, for some, interestingly enough, they're going to the office because there's a more ergo-friendly setup. There are height adjustable desks and there is a better chair. And at home, I live in a tiny studio. I put a shelf up to be my desk because I don't have room, right? Or I'm still on the dining room table 3 years later. So there's that thing happening. And then there's the opposite, which is, you know what? I got myself more comfortable at home. The office just redid itself and they got pretty things, but it doesn't feel good. And so I don't want to come in. So this is part of the battle, which is interesting. And then at the same time, some companies are saying, well, we're not going to pay for anything from home because there's an office you can come to. And then the employee is saying, but it doesn't feel good over there and I'm not going to come in and hurt myself. So that is a huge consideration. And I think companies would really benefit to really pay attention to making sure that they're providing what employees need from a comfort standpoint. If they're actually saying you have to come back here, right? And then there's the hoteling station, which is, well, there's a desk, but that's all there is. So people are now back on their laptops hunched over and then they're hurting. And then there's some that say, well, no, we've got the plugins, and then people are not using this plugin, so they're back to hunching over
Right.
their laptop.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this has been an interesting thing that we're following in particular, which is like, uh-oh. And I think it's part of why it's a bit of a mess, because mandates are happening, but people are not necessarily adhering to them.
So
And that's one
I'll
of
be
the
a
drivers.
total devil's advocate on this too.
Please. Okay.
Are we always going to come up with excuses?
That's
Like,
not an excuse. If my back
no,
hurts,
no,
I'm
no,
not
no.
doing it.
I
Right.
think it's more like you have a great setup, right? And now, and maybe your office is providing it, but you're like, really, I just don't want to go into the office. So then they kind of come up. It's like the traffic. We're always coming up with, oh, there's too much traffic. It takes me too long to get to work. There's always reasons.
But
I'm just
it's
curious.
true, though. I'm going to play devil's
Yeah.
advocate back, which is,
Yeah.
if you were on the grind, and so many people were, leaving the house literally at 7, coming home at 7, 8, and you have kids, you have a family, forget even kids. Like, I never got, not me personally, because I work remotely, but this is something that I hear all the time, which is it was killing me. And then they got off that train, and they're like, I can't get myself to
Go back. Yeah.
So you can say, stop being a wuss, tough up, do what you got to do. Yes. But there's also that thing of like, well, wait, but why? Like, that was not healthy. So maybe people are just got a taste of a different life balance and
Totally.
are really wanting to hold on to that. I don't know if that's
I'm-
an excuse other than
I may end up saying this in every episode for as long as we do this,
do it.
but we were going down this path anyway because we have all these tools that allow us to, and they work. So we're just going to keep moving down that path. I think it was inevitable. I really do.
Do you think this would have
But-
happened without a pandemic?
Yes, just it would have taken longer.
I mean, telecommuting, which is what it was called, was a growing thing for sure. But it was
Yes.
still a small fraction of the whole.
But I think a lot of us learned how to do it or learned how to make it work. I mean, we've talked about the fact I didn't have all the tools 3 years ago. Now I'm about to buy a height adjustable desk. I've got the monitor and the keyboard and all the sound stuff and the mouse and the chair and the footstool and all the stuff. In many ways, I am more comfortable at home. So why not? And I don't have to commute over a mountain range to get to work every day, which is what I do 3 or 4 days a week.
Right.
Mike, I think that's interesting. I think we were totally on the path of this. However, I think there's some businesses that may have never or thought about doing it. You mentioned law firms. Law firms historically would have never done work from home.
No.
And now they can do depositions on, virtually, and, the lot less travel for trial and things like that. And they can work from home. So I think it's an interesting thing that I think some companies that may not have been able to do it before now have been able to embrace that a little bit more.
Let's even think about the three of us. Would we have thought to do something like this on Zoom and
No.
post it as a podcast 3 or 4 years ago? I don't think we would have. I think we would have said, oh, it would be great if we could do this once in a while. Vivienne, we'll wait till you fly out to California and then we'll all sit in a room together and talk. Like, I think we have changed so many ways of thinking.
Yes.
And we all talk to each other often, even outside of the podcast. The fact that we think we've decided to do this and it works quite well. We know each other well. I mean, honestly, Vivienne, how many times have we seen each other in person over 10 or 15 years? Maybe 10 times?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
Amy and I probably more, but
Yeah.
but we're friends and this works and it's great. I don't know that would have been true 10 years ago.
That's true. And also, it depends what you do, right? So in my
Very
case,
true.
I am a consultant, right? So the nature of my job in particular is very, very varied. But one of my things under my charge is sort of business development. Well, pre-pandemic, everything was FaceTime, right? And it was in the conference room. It was in the stiff clothes we've talked about in the past. And, there's an immediate, not barrier, but kind of, right, that you have to sort of overcome. And there's a magic that happens in person. But especially a lot of our clients are Bay Area headquartered. So with the traffic getting as bad as it got, I was only able to really do maybe 2 meetings in a day because I'd have to go after rush hour and then see that person at 11, then maybe I could see that next person at 1, and then I have to head back because otherwise I spent 6 hours in the car. So my productivity was like horrible. Now, if I want to, I can talk to 10 people in a day remotely. So, I mean, it depends on what you do, right? And so, and the tools that are out there. But
in person still matters so much, and I miss those meetings. Truthfully, nothing would make me happier than for the three of us to be sitting around a table together. But I think we've gotten better at relating to each other. I think we've learned to connect differently. We've talked about the fact I've managed people remotely for 20 years. I have good relationships with people who work for me. It's better now because I'm using a video tool to talk to them. But it takes time to learn to do that and how to, take that 5 minutes to have a little personal conversation before you dive into work or whatever your practices are.
And I also feel like, especially during the pandemic, and we were all like, all we had was Zoom or whatever version of Zoom. There was we all had common ground because it was the pandemic to talk about, but there was also like the CEO of whatever big company suddenly just became John when his 2-year-old came and pulled off his glasses. You know what I mean? And suddenly we're just two humans like going through this wacko experience. And it did something that set the stage for today to still be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's very true. So much of what happens in a meeting is more acceptable.
Yeah.
Like your cat, Vivienne. I mean, if you look at your cat right now, I find watching the cat is very calming. Taking some great.
And notice that the cat is in the ergonomic chair. On the dining room chair. Don't even ask how that happened.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes, or he bites my ankles if I don't give up the chair.
What?
But I mean, prior, like we wouldn't have been able to, you would have been so embarrassed to have your cat in there, right?
Like I didn't even.
It's unprofessional. I can't have that.
And now that's like what humanizes all of us.
Yes,
it's true.
It really does.
But I think you need to swap chairs with the cat.
Oh, I will when he gets off. But
I think you need 2 ergonomic chairs is what you need.
I think I do. I have my ergo cushion, which turns my dining room chair into a comfortable chair, but that's besides the point. So here's a question I have. Like, I'm always curious, who is it a mess for? The employees, the employer, and is it a mess? Because I always say, oh God, it's such a mess out there. And I don't know if it's a mess because it's confusing or it's just different or it's fractured or... Like,
it's funny. I don't know that I see it as a mess. Well,
yeah, I think that's what I'm struggling with too. The mess.
I think that the only mess to my mind is the indecision and the lack of acceptance of where we really are. You can keep pounding your fist on the table, begging people to come back to the office, but if they're not going to come back to the office, why are you still pounding your fist? Like that, to me, is the problem. I remember having a conversation with an executive in a certain place that I worked maybe 2 years ago. And he said, well, what happens if what if they're not productive? Have we talked about this before?
That was last episode. Yes. Tune in, people. Wait.
That kind of stuff. Like, okay, nothing's really changed, really, except whether or not you're sitting in a room together. If you need some learning around how to manage people remotely, that's another whole subject altogether.
Well, and then there's also managing people in the office. So, I mean, I'm just it cuts both ways. So my husband gave up his office at the time of the pandemic. And it was a miracle that he was actually let out of the lease. And it's a telemarketing company. And they learned that they could actually call from home. And so they saved $1 trillion with New York office rents, right? They found that people could call from home, which meant they could expand their calling workforce. They weren't confined to the number of phone stations that they used to have in a calling center. So that was a positive. But I remember very distinctly one of his employees said, oh my God, I could finally get work done. And I don't have to stay at work until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Because what would happen was during the day, they'd be chatty and they would talk about this, that, or the other, or there was a million interruptions. And she would physically stay, like at 5 o'clock, she would sit down and start to do her work. And then she'd wind up going home at 10 o'clock at night. So for different people, that was a game changer to not have that office interruption. So it's very interesting.
Although I have to say I miss that. That, like, to me, particularly in my role, those office conversations that happen in the hallway or in the kitchen are huge. That's part of how I do my job. And that has been a little more challenging. It's harder to know what's going on if I'm not here.
Now, let me ask you this, both of you actually. Is part of the mess also what, like, we've talked about this in the last podcast of just productivity, different personalities will thrive different in different places, different environments, blah, blah, blah. But just from like a liability standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from like what is an employer responsible for if it's sort of choice, right? So, hey, you can choose to be hybrid, you can choose to work in the office, you can choose to work at home, versus you have to come in the office, but you're not wanting to. Or I'm hiring now outside the perimeter of my office because I can expand my talent base. What am I responsible for?
Right? I think that's an ongoing debate that honestly I've heard maybe over the last 5 or 6 years. And if you go to the employee advocates on your legal team, every one of them has a different answer to that question.
Yeah. That's confusing.
And so that is a mess. I don't think we have clarity on what we are responsible for. Yeah. That said, I also hear from all of my friends, and I'm seeing this myself, this desire to find equity between remote and office. You know, it used to be cooler to be in the office, and the remote people always felt like they were, second-class citizens. Now we're trying to figure out how to make it as equitable as possible, so everybody feels like they're treated the same, they're connected in similar ways. And I think we're making some strides there, and that's great. I really am an advocate for trying to make the experience better no matter where you are.
See, because I'm hearing a lot, just going back to the ergo thing, it's like, hey, we can come back on site now and we can do ergo there. And people are like, well, people are coming back, but they're not coming back necessarily to work. They're coming for events. They're coming for team building. They're coming for whatever. So I'm just curious, Amy, if that's like affected you guys, like the planning you do in the space and just maybe that's part of that customized use case.
That's exactly right. It's flipped it, actually. You know, we don't need all the workstations and the desks. We need the social areas. And how does that look? You know, Mike, you mentioned earlier virtual first. Those places, they're more experience centers now. This is like a place where somebody can come in, a team can come in and do some kind of team meeting or, event of some sort, have lunch, have dinner, whatever it might be. It's way more social than what it used to be. So that, and just making sure too, with that space, that the technology is going to match it is super important. And I think that's been a big change pre-pandemic to now, is having the technology support that work environment.
See, Mike, you said something years ago, actually, at the beginning of the pandemic, and it struck me. Remember we were just going home for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then it was 2 more weeks, then it was 6 more weeks, and then here we are.
2 years.
Right, we're still trying to figure it out.
Lost my job. Yeah. Well,
but you said something really that stuck with me. You're like, how do I even plan, so let's just say you make this mandate, and you need to come back 3 days a week. But we've taken away a lot of the desks, and we don't exactly know who's coming back when. And, we have the cool apps that are now you can book a desk and available, or you have the neighborhood and you're already smiling. But anyway, the notion of how do I even know what janitorial services I need? How do I know how many lunches do we need? Now that could be a mess, right? Because there's maybe there's patterns that are emerging, but
yeah,
it's hard to plan for, right?
Yeah. I feel like that's an evolution in how we're working. So you're right, it is a mess, but I don't think of it in that way. I think it's just getting better and better as we go along. But it's funny that and some of the things Amy, it's a challenge. And the other things that Amy were saying, I feel more and more like I am managing a convention center than an office. Like,
Interesting.
the start of my career was as a planner, as a space planner. I was a great space planner. That's out the like. Who cares about space planning? Now it's
Amy be like, I do. But anyway.
Yeah.
well,
No, this is the team that we like to work with now, these convention center event planners.
that's it.
That's what it is.
I do have to do a little bit of both, but what I mean is I spend so little time worrying about occupancy studies and like I can literally go to the window and look outside and see who's coming into the office that day. It's not the same situation for me. If I were at a big fruit company a few blocks away, it might be slightly different. But it is all about coordinating events and activities and how many people are flying in from here at such and such a time. I got an email this morning from an employee saying, I'm bringing 5 people in 2 weeks and I need a conference room for 3 days and I need to order lunch and can you help me? Sure. That's what we do now. So I think it's evolving a little bit so that, we've alluded to this already. Coming to the office is about being social. It's about connecting with other people. And that now involves all these other things that have nothing to do with the 5x5 desk over there that we're going to sit you in. Because you may not spend much time in it.
Isn't it funny too? Are you seeing that they're wanting more of an experience? Like there needs to be something really tangible that they can walk away and say, oh, it was so nice coming into the office because our meal was good. Or I don't know. They just always want to walk away with some kind of like experience to talk about.
I want to do this again.
Yeah. Before we just got a box lunch and sent you on your way, but now they want like more.
And I have found interestingly that I feel like we've become a little more cliquish in our office behavior. In other words, there's a smaller group of people who come together, who see each other 4 or 5 days a week, 3 or 4 days a week, whatever it is. And then there are a few people who trickle in 1 day a week, but that core group are becoming closer. And
it's like high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then do you let the people who only come in 1 day, do you allow them to sit at your table for lunch?
No, they're out. Not interested.
Do you have resentment towards those people?
I came over the hill 4 days this week.
Yeah.
Well, me. Like oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. And why don't you come in more often? Right. That's my personality. That came up this morning in a meeting where I'm like, yes, we really want you to come in. I don't care how often you come in, as long as you come in. I think what I find is funny, the people who don't come in very often, they'll come in the door and then everybody's hugging and it's so good to see you. And like our appreciation of each other and our connection to each other has changed because of that. Because we now really cherish the times that we see each other in person. I had a woman come in a few weeks ago who I know and who I talk to relatively regularly, but I've only met her once. And she only lives a few miles away, but that's another story. And she walked in and like gave me a big hug, like, Mike, it's me, and I forgot what you looked like, even though I see you on camera, you don't look the same in person. So
and you have legs, you're 3D, it's beautiful. Right.
I think it's funny, like maybe that's because we couldn't hug before. Like I feel like I hug a lot more now because it got taken away from me or something. And so now I want to make sure I give a hug for everything.
Well, I think our connection to people overall has changed completely. Our desire to connect, to see each other is an entirely different experience than it used to be.
I will say something. I've seen the opposite in some of like people in my life personally. Like there was a gathering that I had with some friends and there was some family and there was a couple of people that like couldn't hang with it. It was really interesting. They kept retreating and like maybe going online or on their phone. And I was like, wow. Like I have started to see just a handful of people, but it happened more than once. And I'm like, the pandemic changed you. Like,
do you think they are inherently introverts?
Yes.
Yeah. Who have moved to what they are more comfortable.
And they're like, oh, thank God this pandemic happened. Right? No, seriously. But it's interesting to see. And
maybe they feel it's socially acceptable now to go off and do your own thing. And nobody's going to say anything.
Just gotten comfortable, right? Because they're in their sort of own space. But I've even noticed just when you were talking about the interaction, just even like Zoom etiquette. So in my own company, I'd say there's a small handful of us that loves to be on camera. Like I find it connective and I want to see their face and we laugh. And then there's like, that's a small group of us, and the rest really like to not be on camera. And we have a policy like you do you. Like if you don't want to be on camera that day, don't come on camera. But I feel like I just wonder if that's also like helps people feel a little bit more connected when you can physically see them.
Mhm.
Or maybe, hey, we're so
1,000%.
comfortable with each other, we don't need to see you. Like, I don't know.
Oh, I
Wonder.
totally think the camera on connects me to people. When somebody doesn't have a camera on, I'm like, what else are they doing? And they may not be doing anything
and don't have
else.
the camera on, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, you just feel like they must be doing other things, or they're just not giving. Like right here, we can tell that we have our undivided attention.
Right.
It's really hard to tell from that. So I'm always
Or
questioning it.
if
I feel like we could do a whole episode on Zoom etiquette.
We should.
I think it would be hilarious.
It is
Really.
hilarious. But I've had meetings where literally the camera is off and the people are muted. And then the telltale sign is they'll go, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah.
Like, you are busted.
You are not paying attention. I'll think I'll turn it on and off, like, okay, I got to go in the kitchen and do something when I'm home. And so I will turn the camera off because I'm not going to leave blank screen and then I go do it. I'm still listening.
Or people will carry you with them. And then
with
you get
them.
Dizzy.
Yeah.
Yes. I had a meeting once where somebody literally was cooking dinner and she was unfazed and I was like, all right, whatever. Like, okay, that's cool. And then I've had group meetings where nobody's on camera. So I'm like, do I stay on camera? Do I
we've done RFP interviews, many of them over Zoom, that the people we're presenting to, where none of them turn on their camera. And it's really painful because you have no idea, like, we worked days, hours to put this together. Right. And you have no idea. I mean, body language tells a lot of things, right? Knowing if they're paying attention, yeah. How engaged they are, it means a lot. You hang up and you're just like, I don't even know. Did they like it? Right. Did they not like it? No idea.
Do you want to yell at them in the middle of the meeting? Turn your camera on?
Kind of. That probably would really remove me from the opportunity.
But what about like there was once upon a time that all we had was a phone.
Right.
And you could be very connective on the phone. So I don't
know.
Well, we all have to be chameleon-ish.
I think it depends who you're talking to, because I'll tell you, one of the things my boss did to me during COVID was saying our alignment, which we did weekly, is a walking alignment. And so we would both be on phone walking. Nice. Each of us would go for a walk, and that's how we would talk. And honestly, it bonded us even more, right? Because you're getting fresh air. You tend to kind of elaborate on things that you may not have. Right. And it was great. So I think it depends who you're talking to, but sometimes just a phone conversation can be more engaging.
Yeah. And it's also, do you have history with the person? Is the other person connective? I mean, I'm going really off topic here, but over the pandemic, my amazing piano teacher who lives in Philadelphia would come to New York every other week and we'd take in-person lessons. Well, that was gone. And so he figured out how to do Zoom lessons, but we have literally a 20-year history with each other. So it was seamless for us, right? Because it was like, he already knows my quirks and my good things and bad things. So, but my sister-in-law is also a piano teacher. And she said, like, taking on new students was really challenging. It's like, I only have this little view of it. So maybe it goes back to like what we were saying, what you do, who you are. Is this a mess, or is it just like different? And we've got to adapt or learn to adapt or keep readapting or whatever.
I think evolving. That's the word I would choose. I think we have a lot to learn.
Messes, we'll call it challenges.
It's okay. It's okay to say it's a mess, because I think for some people it is. I mean, there's probably no question of that. It's the same, I think, discussion we've had about how the early days of COVID was for people. I've said many times, sort of apologetically, I think it was awesome for us, because my kids, my son-in-law, my 2 kids, my wife and I at home cooking and doing all kinds of fun stuff. For a lot of people, it was really painful. We actually found it kind of cool. I hate to admit, but we did.
Well, that is true. And in my case, I had a family member get quite ill at the beginning of COVID, and I was able to step off the plane and really be here. and present. So that was a blessing. I feel like I missed COVID because I was entrenched in that. But no, there definitely upsides and definitely downsides. And I don't know, Amy, how it was for you.
Yeah. Well, my husband was great. He like brought on all these new like talents and hobbies and things like that and evolved. I'm a mixed bag because I'm an extrovert. And so that part was really hard for me. But then there's the side where it was like really nice to slow down because I was working too hard and I had no balance in my life. So that was the huge benefit for me. There was a moment that like 2 days before where I actually said, wow, I haven't had dinner with my family in a long time. Well, had I known that it was going to be 2 years of
Every
dinners with
night.
my family after, I don't know. But
So how is it now? I mean, because you're back in the office part-time, full-time. Do you feel like you
probably
have
three
balance?
quarters of the time. Um, I'm working on it. No, I think I had balance. And then I think I got overly anxious and excited that there were so many events coming back. And that takes me into the evenings. And so then you don't want to miss, you have FOMO, right? You're like, oh, this got taken away from me before. I don't want to miss this
Yeah, yeah,
opportunity.
yeah.
And now I'm trying to retract a little bit back again. So I think I have more awareness than before. So now I know how to kind of pull back when need to. And I want to just touch on what you said, Mike. It is evolving. And I think that that's the powerful word here that I'd like to look at because there's no roadmap through this. I think
Nope.
before we kind of had like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. But now we're all kind of just trying things out and testing and seeing what works. And it's evolving. And what we're recognizing more than anything is it's different for every one of us.
Yeah.
And I love that part of it. It's very
Yeah.
challenging.
I think we've sort of been dancing around the work-life balance thing in this whole discussion, and that's exactly the point. We had boundaries 10, 15, 20 years ago that have slowly eroded to now we are working 24 hours a day. Our phones are constantly on, and we all do some level of national, international work where we're connected to people in other countries. And so we've completely, at some point, lost the ability to balance our lives. And if nothing else, this whole exercise of the last 3.5 years is teaching us not how to have work-life balance, but that we need it and we need to figure it out. And so I think all of us are trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And advocating for yourself, right?
Yes.
Advocating.
Yes.
And then working for companies that support you through that wellness journey, right? That's huge. You've got to find somebody who aligns with what your goals are. And sometimes even says to you, you're doing too much. We need to take a step back.
Yeah, I agree. So to wrap things up, I know we've done this before. We'll probably do it again. And just see if anything changed since our first episode. Your prediction, Amy, 5 years from now.
Oh, Vivienne.
Will it still be a mess?
My prediction,
yeah,
it will be a mess, but that's what I love, I guess. I like the challenge of it all. So I hope that I'm continuously challenged. I hope that there is still that strong focus on balance and wellness in our society and acceptance of that. And I hope that, we can all prioritize our family before our jobs, and not the other way around. And I hope, we don't lose focus of that. Nice. So I'm not sure if I'm giving you a 5-year plan. Those are just my goals in life.
No, but you said something that triggered a thought. But before I share that, Mike, you're 5 years from now.
Yeah, I tend to think more about sort of the business side of it. I think we'll still be in a mess from a commercial real estate perspective.
Yeah. That is a mess. That's a whole topic.
And that's, I think a lot will have changed in our business, the work that we all do. I'd like to hope we're focusing a little bit more on ergonomics with you. Like really focusing on it because it's not a difficult thing to fix. I think we will have learned a lot. But I think our industry is going to change a lot and it will be very different. I think there will be a lot of our friends who are no longer in the business because it'll just be a challenge. And I hate saying that I hate it, but I think it's just a fact.
Mhm.
And if I had to predict, I don't know like physically how this will play out, but I do think, and I think underneath this tug of war of come back, I don't want to, is what you said, Amy, is like, I need something that is not as insane as it was,
Mhm.
right? So look at a country like France. It's illegal to send emails after 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Like it's literally against the law, right? I don't think we're going to go there, but I would love to see kind of a mindset shift of, look, you want to come in the office, great. It doesn't have to be all day. Like, why can't you come in the office from like 9, like in the morning, and then go do whatever, and then do your work whenever it suits you? Which is one of the things that we'll tell our employees here at PBE. I don't care when you get your work done, as long as you get it done. So a little bit more deadline driven, which I know doesn't apply to some jobs, right? They have to be more people facing, and you have to be available. But I hope that that will be the driver. Like, what is really going to work for people? Because this burnout thing is like really didn't work.
It's concerning. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
It'd also be really interesting to spend a little bit of time talking about those who don't have the options that we do one of these days, which is
we're
still,
vomiting right now as they listen.
yeah, exactly.
They turned
Because
us
that's
off
like
a long time
a
ago.
long time ago. They don't care.
This is yeah.
But the changes we've made are making their commutes much better, right?
I hope. I hope.
Not this morning, definitely not this morning. But
Although I will say one last thing, there are changes in industries that are very surprising. I had
yes.
dinner with a cousin of mine who's a therapist, and she closed her office, and she does everything on Zoom now. And she said, it's helped me actually able to help more people because I have more time and have a little bit more balance and be more flexible in my hours and blah, blah, blah. And you normally wouldn't have thought of that. There's medical companies now who are like, all our doctors do virtual visits. And there's apps now like, oh, you can't get to whatever. That's great. Just plug in and here we are. So anyway, it'll be interesting how this evolves.
And that's a good point. It could be that the things that we're doing may start to evolve into some other industries over time, and we'll think differently about how we work.
It'll be interesting. AI will do it all, and then we'll go have fun.
Then we're going to be sitting on the beach drinking our Mai Tais.
I'm down for it.
I'm in. That sounds good. Let's do it.
That's what we're going to be doing in 5 years.
Sitting on the beach, AI can do it all.
Let's strive to do an episode on the beach with Mai Tais. We'll figure out how to do that. One, I don't know how we'll do it. We'll just pass a phone camera around, like on a stick.
The robot can do it.
Yeah, the robot can do it. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, we're gonna wrap up here. We'll see you guys the next time, and thanks for tuning in.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.